This is Architect's Instruction number 3. We seem to think about the changes to our careers in moments, a promotion, a pay rise, or the starting of a new role. That clear turning point, a moment against the mundanity. These moments are easy to see, but in reality, they're the result, the visible outcome of hundreds of small things done consistently, patterns of behaviour built over time. This is an idea that's taken me a long time to properly understand, but now I can see it everywhere I look. Now, it's easy to understand why we're drawn to these moments. They're legible, easy to celebrate, helpful to explain after the fact. But by the time that moment arrives, most of the work has already been done. And this is why most career advice can feel so unhelpful when you're stuck in it. It focuses on the outcome, giving you the magic pill for the result without actually acknowledging that those results are rarely controllable in any direct sense. That's the uncomfortable but somewhat liberating truth. You don't actually control most career outcomes. You can't promote yourself. You can't decide when a client trusts you enough to hire you. You can't force your boss to see that you're ready. But we're wired to focus on the outcomes. They're tangible and measurable. They feel like proof. So even when we know academically that we can't control them, we still orientate our entire self of progress around whether they arrive or not. So much frustration at work comes from focusing on things that we can't steer, wanting the promotion, wanting recognition, wanting clarity about what's next. And when those things don't arrive, it's easy to feel stuck or overlooked, even when you're working hard and doing great work. It's a bit like focusing on losing 3 stone in weight. You can't directly control your weight loss. You can only control your behaviors, going to the gym, eating differently, sleeping better, and being mindful of becoming the kind of person who prioritizes their health. Your identity changes first and the results follow. And your architectural career works in exactly the same way. If you accept that you can't control these things, you push the focus on how you influence them, the part that is in your control, the patterns that you create, how you show up day to day, how you communicate, how you handle uncertainty, how you take ownership before you're asked to. Focusing on these inputs, allowing the outcomes to follow. The thing is, 2 architects can be equally competent, equally reliable, equally good at their job. Yet over time, one is trusted with complexity and the other isn't, not because of talent or effort, but because of patterns of behaviour. One consistently adds clarity when things are uncertain, the other waits for instruction. One connects their decisions to broader project outcomes, the other focuses only on the immediate delivery. One makes their thinking visible, the other assumes that the work speaks for itself. And I've seen this play out directly. A colleague and I started at the same practice within months of each other. He was technically brilliant, genuinely talented architect, and if you gave him a problem, he'd solve it with rigour. But he rarely spoke up in meetings unless directly asked. He'd wait for the project lead to set the direction before he executed on it. And when clients had questions, he'd always defer upwards rather than engage. Ultimately, all of his work was contained within the tasks that he was given. Now, I wasn't a better architect than him, but I did do something different. I made my thinking visible. And when something was unclear, I'd talk to my bosses outlining the options and what I'd recommend. In meetings, I'd connect technical decisions back to the project intent and the client interests. And when a client asked me a question, I'd answer it even if it wasn't really my responsibility. None of this really felt strategic at the time, but it was more just about how I approached the work. But over a couple of years, the gap widened and I moved into leadership and eventually became part of the senior management. He remained as an architect, obviously respected and trusted with these complex tasks, but never given that broader responsibility. Now, this wasn't because anyone decided that he wasn't capable, but because the patterns he'd reinforced for years were of waiting to be directed rather than shaping the direction. And ultimately, this is because patterns compound in both directions. And that's the part that's easy to miss. Just as constructive patterns build momentum, limiting ones do too. Individually, these don't feel like mistakes. They are moments in themselves, but repeated over a year, then 3, then 5, they quietly define how people place you. You become the reliable one rather than the one we trust with a difficult conversation. You're seen as capable of execution, but not strategy. It's not because you couldn't do more, but because you've never demonstrated. Progress rarely stalls because of a single bad decision. It's more because nothing new is being reinforced. So instead of asking, how do I get promoted, try asking, what are the things that somebody who is ready for more responsibility is already demonstrating? That's the part that you are in control of. Not the moment, not the outcome, but building the pattern. The really difficult thing is that patterns are hard to see when you're inside them. You might need to step back and look honestly at what you've been reinforcing and find a big bucket of self-awareness. Not what you intended to do or what you think you're doing, but what you've actually been doing consistently. Have a think, or maybe even ask a colleague to see what patterns you have and what type of reputation you've been building for yourself.